Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Scelzi Says. I'm Joe Costello, along with the four-time NHRA champion, Gary Scelzi. Gary, welcome back.
Joe, great to be back.
Now, it's been a little while. We took a week or two off. Where have you been? What's been going on with Gary?
Well, Scelzi Enterprises has been absolutely crazy, and I had a foreman on vacation. And unfortunately, when that happens, I have to fill in. And, it made me miss drag racing a little more because the real world is not very kind to a short, fat little Italian, that's for sure.
Well, hey, the show must go on, and we are back. And fortunately, a lot of things have gone down to talk about. We've got 2 races left to go. We got Vegas upcoming, then Pomona. The championship battles are moving around. We've had some controversy. What do you think about it so far?
I'll tell you, excitement at its best at the end of the season. It's almost like July was silly season, but I'll tell you, this thing with Schumacher and that Shroud deal, it's just amazing how they hammered Don Schumacher. I was on fire. I've probably been on fire more in a dragster than ever on a funny car. Fortunately, I always had Mike Neff and good tuners, so I didn't spend a lot of time being on fire in a funny car. But I've got a helmet in my office from 1998 when we were at Atlanta, Georgia, and fireballed one. And the common thing to happen in a top fuel dragster is fire to suck into the cockpit because it's a low pressure zone. I got the car stopped. Everything went orange. I jumped out of the car, and at the time, Lefty was the head safety safari guy. When I jumped out of the car, they were squirting me in the head with a fire hose. And I turned around, and they said, "Are you okay, Scelzi?" And I said, "Yeah." And then they started laughing. And I said, "What's so funny?" And they said, "Well, you got out of the car. Your helmet was on fire." It had actually burned the paint and then started the carbon on fire because I was on fire for so long. Now, obviously, nothing happened to me. I was, I always wore a head sock inside of a sock with the helmet. I always wore more safety equipment than actually the NHRA required. Corey Mack, myself, anybody that ever driven a top fuel car, the minute that engine would catch on fire, it would suck right to the cockpit, and that was common practice. But what's so funny, Joe, that was back in 1998, and this had been going on for years. In fact, I've got pictures in my office all over the place with huge explosions and fire inside the cockpit, and there was nothing ever done about that. And I find it so amazing that, Schumacher tried to take a step to make things safer, and I understand that Antron had a fire come in there, but there was nothing really done. When a fire suit catches fire, it normally turns kind of a pinkish color when it's been on fire, and Antron's hardly had any singe marks on it. Now, I remember a year ago when they started to play with these windshields and different things that Corey Mack had been on fire, and the fire went inside there just like it did, and they put NACA ducts on the side of the windscreen to help get air through there. And I know now that when Schumacher did his new deal that they eliminated those, and I'm not sure why, if it helped or didn't help. But I find it odd that, in a long-winded answer, or my concerns about this, that they wait till the last 3 races when it wasn't a performance advantage, and that could be held for argument, whatever. They've got engineers that say one thing or not. But why wouldn't you just wait till the end of the year and say, okay, now we're not going to do it, when the other teams had a long time to bitch about it or copy it or do whatever they wanted to do if they did feel it was a performance advantage? And I'm not sticking up for Don Schumacher, believe me, but I just felt it was kind of wrong the way Graham Light and the way NHRA did their deal after approving it.
You are most bothered by the timing rather than anything else.
I am, and the fire that came in Antron's cockpit was caused by a torched head gasket that torched a fuel line, and fuel was spraying in there. Anything would have made that catch on fire, but it didn't last very long. It went away right away, and there was no, there's been a lot worse fires the way that they're going to make the rule now than obviously the way it was with Antron. I'm not going to say it would make it any worse, but it certainly isn't going to make it any better the way it is now. So the reason for it, I don't know. I don't think Schumacher's cars are going to slow down. So whether it's a performance advantage or not, I don't know. But if it was a performance advantage, Don Gartlett said years ago, copy the obvious. And when Amato went and moved his rear wing way up in the air, everybody followed, not really knowing what was going on, just thinking it was in clean air, and they all picked up mile an hour. They could have copied this top, like they said, for a couple $100 and put that on their cages, and they'd have the same performance advantage if there indeed is a performance advantage. I find the timing bad. I find the reasoning bad. I find everything bad about it when we've been catching on fire for years, and now all of a sudden they're concerned about our safety.
Now, the question about performance advantage, I think, is a little murky to a lot of the fans out there, Gary, because I think the common assumption isn't everything supposed to be a performance advantage. If you're running a different camshaft or a different type of valve or insert performance part here, isn't the whole purpose of that to be a performance advantage? And if we start saying that, aren't we making a spec series?
I think what they're trying to do is it was presented as a safety item, a safety factor for the drivers, and that's what sold NHRA on it. But again, it's NHRA's fault for not doing research and letting Schumacher spend $100,000 to develop this thing. I mean, they've done wind tunnel testing, computer testing, a lot of different things. And I guess they're working for an enclosed cockpit, trying to figure out how to make it lighter and whatever the reason is. The bottom line is they're saying that the air going to the injector is better, which makes more boost, which makes more speed, which I know Tony Schumacher ran 327 miles an hour, which is pretty amazing. But, you know, I think other guys have run 325. Is it an advantage? Okay, so what if it is a safety enhancement and a performance advantage in both? Big deal. I mean, I think we're picking pepper out of fly. Sorry for the language, but you know what I mean? It's minute. They could have waited till the end of the year. Bad call, I think, on NHRA's part. I think they could have done it a little bit different and done a little more research before they came down with a hammer on it.
Before we get to the questions for Gary, the racing has been unbelievable. Don's teams were able to make it to the final round. Antron has retaken the points lead. Jack Beckman is now a points leader. And we have got ourselves 2 races to decide this deal.
8 rounds. I think Top Fuel, it still could be. I mean, who would have thought that Spencer Massey was not going to qualify? I would have bet every red cent I had in my pocket that would have been impossible. I don't know. That's amazing that could even possibly happen. But again, this is drag racing. Anything can happen. Beckman winning and being in the points lead, I don't believe is a shocker to anybody. I think the shocker was Mike Neff getting beat by Robert Height when he was actually pulling ahead, and then it ended up being a whole shot win. I think the fans are in for some excitement. I think Vegas is a fast racetrack. It's going to be cool there. It's going to be a big deal. I don't think they're going to get spread out. If somebody can win and get a couple of round lead going into Pomona, I got to say they're going to be the favorite going in there. But the way it looks right now, I still say it's anybody's game in the top 3 or 4. You know, I think that's what we're going to see. 3 or 4 coming down to Pomona. I think Pro Stock's pretty much done deal. And the bike thing is still a little bit open, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And, you know, so I think that's going to be our thing. Top Fuel, Funny Car, and Pro Stock Bike are the ones to watch.
All right, we've got questions for Gary. If you want to send a question to Gary, send it to Bobby at CompetitionPlus.com. That's the great editor of Competition Plus, Bobby Bennett. And I've got a couple questions for you, Gary. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Ralph from the internet writes, just discovered the Scelzi Says audio program. It's great to hear informed talk about what's actually going on in the sport without the NHRA ESPN2 PC filter. My question for Gary is to ask his opinion of 1,000-foot racing, and why can't we slow down and go back to 1320? I saw the recent piece by Garlitz, and I completely agree. I hate 1,000 feet racing. Slowing them down seems like a mere technical issue. Blowers, mags, etc. Why hasn't it happened?
Well, I'll tell you. I think that we say we want to see quarter-mile racing again, but I think those days are over. I think the reason for that is if you slow these cars down, you're going to say, man, that was a boring-looking run compared to what you've seen now. We've got places like Englishtown, Pomona, places that have been around forever and have a lot of meaning that you can't not go away from. If you lose those racetracks, we're not going to gain any racetracks. You know, it's a big deal for me to have never won Englishtown, New Jersey. The safety becomes such a huge factor, and you know, I like the quarter-mile racing. I really do. But these cars have gotten so fast, and to slow them down, nobody can come to an agreement. Nobody can say, hey, this is what you're going to do. If you say take a mag out, okay, you take a mag out. The big super teams, which still have an advantage, they have better superchargers. They've got blower dynos. They've got better stuff than the average guy, which in my opinion, the big buck guys are going to win. The multi-car teams are going to win no matter what you do to the rules. It's very hard to find the independent guys do some winning. And unfortunately, that's the nature of our beast. And I think the cow is out of the barn. It's too late to ring that back in. So I'd like to see the 1,000 foot go away. but I think it's just never going to happen. I don't think you're going to be able to get the fuel guys together to quit bitching about what's going to happen. I don't think NHRA, especially where the economy is, wants to lose any more cars or teams and say, hey, this is what you're going to have to do, a smaller fuel pump, this or that, to cost the guys any more money. I just think you've got Congress is what's going on. Nobody can agree from a Republican to a Democrat. I don't think you're going to fix it. Myself, I was okay with 1,000 foot after losing Scott Coletta. That extra 320 feet is huge in stopping. It doesn't sound like much, but I went off the end at Pomona a few years back on a Winter Nationals run that I was a little bit late on the chute, and the one chute took out the other chute, and I didn't want to make the corner because there were people standing around there, and I put the car about 12 feet into the sand. We were able to come back and run the final round and beat Robert Height only because Robert Height crossed the center line and hit a cone because he was kicking our ass. But that extra 320 feet would have made no body damage and no damage whatsoever, would have saved me. So I think the 1,000 foot's here to stay. Get used to it. But they are still going to have to slow these cars down. But I think the technology is way faster than the movements that they're making to slow the cars down. So
it's been great racing this year. We've got great championship battles in both Top Fuel and Funny Car. And as much as the purist, myself included, would love to see him go to the quarter mile, this is what we've got, and we got to get used to it. And the racing has been great. All right, next question. Gary, do you want to go on the record about Dan Weldon and the incident we saw a couple of weeks ago? We're talking about shrouds and closed cockpits. We're talking about safety. And while that is Indy Car racing, the racing community seems like one big community. And when someone is lost, everyone starts to think about safety once again.
Well, I actually met Dan Weldon several years ago when I was at Indianapolis. I was going to ride in the two-seater with Davey Hamilton, and it rained, and I was with my friend Jim Head, and we spent a couple hours with Chip Ganassi and Dan Weldon and had one of the best times of my life talking to him. What a great ambassador for IndyCar racing, loved drag racing, loved motorsports in general, and just was a great guy to spend 2 hours with in the rain in Indy. In a little shop talking IndyCar, drag racing, and all types of racing, and personal stuff. I couldn't be more impressed, and he left a lasting impression on me. That being said, what happened in Vegas was the perfect storm. That open cockpit is dangerous. It's been that way forever. The way that car inverted and went into the fence was one of those things that just, doesn't happen and did happen. It seemed like a long time when the wreck had happened when he hit that other car, but they were traveling 225 miles an hour. I think that there's always room for improvement. Their new car has enclosed rear wheels, but I don't care what it had. If it hit something the way it was and ramped up the way it did, you're going to have cars airborne. We've seen 3,500-pound NASCARs fly into the fences. One thing I think that they did learn about it is the fence, the cyclone fence had to pull on the inside and not on the outside of the fence. So unfortunately, and forgive me for this terminology, but it almost worked as a cheese grater. As the car went through there, it was almost like a chopping effect. And that has to change. Whether it would have helped if the pole was on the outside of the fence, who knows? It just, unfortunately, in racing, someone has to die to make things safer. I guarantee you there's going to be things, rules in place and things working towards that way to make it safer. But I guarantee you that Dan knew the circumstances and knew, just like all the drag racers knew, just like I knew, like a sprint car driver, an IRL driver, whatever. We know the risks. We know it can happen. We like to think that it can't happen to us, but it does. And unfortunately, it's a crude reality check for all of us. May God be with him and his family, and our prayers go out to him for sure. But it is part of the game. Not that it's acceptable, but I'm sure that things are going to be made safer. Things are going to be put in place to make the walls. I know Bruton Smith, money is not an object with him and his racetracks. He'll try to figure out or probably come up with something that no one else has ever done to make things safer. But unfortunately, it's one of those things, and there's not much we can do about it.
Couple more questions for Gary Scelzi. This one from Eric in North Carolina. Kind of a statement, really. Scelzi, you freaking rock. You like that, Gary?
Yeah, I do.
He goes on to say, we sure do miss you out here. Just wanted to let you know we appreciate what Joe and you do for the readers at CompetitionPlus.com. I just found out about Joe's WFO show here at CompetitionPlus.com, and I never miss one. I just wanted you guys to know that you matter. Gary, you matter.
Well, that's why we're doing it, Joe. I mean, whether you agree with us or you don't, or agree with me or you do, I'm going to give you the straight shot, just like I always done. And I was never an NHRA boy, I guess, or one of their favorites. I always used to make their hair stand up on the back of their neck when I'd walk by. But I've only known one way to do it, and that's tell you how I feel, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. And that's what you're going to get with us on this show.
And finally, we have one about your future. This one is from Frank in New Jersey. It's an audio one. Are you ready?
Sure.
Are you listening?
I am.
Yo, Scelzi, this is Manzo. I'm thinking about taking a crew chief job, but I'm looking for a driver. If I tune it, will you wheel it for me?
And a heartbeat. Frank Manzo, I remember him when he had his 1984 Monza. Sitting at Billy Williams' shop in Torrance, California when I was just a kid. I was actually 24 years old. And I thought that was the baddest car around. Him and Dale Armstrong with the Alcoholic and Benny's Vet. Those guys are my heroes. Frank is a personal friend of mine. And I would love to drive his alcohol car, but I doubt I could do as good a job as he's done over the years. No question about that.
That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about in the nitro classes.
Oh, are you kidding me?
I'm not kidding you. I spoke with Frank on WFO 2 weeks ago, and he's talking about taking a tuning job, his future, what he's going to do in the future in nitro. And this is I think, very legitimate. We're perhaps breaking some news here, Gary. Frank,
really?
He says he's thinking about. Let's listen to Frank one more time.
Yo, Scelzi, this is Manzo. I'm thinking about taking a crew chief job, but I'm looking for a driver. If I tune it, will you wheel it for me?
See, now I would have thought an alcohol car, but if he's going fuel racing, hell yeah, I'll go with him.
Breaking news right here on Scelzi Says. Now, what would that be? That would be like the all-Italian team.
At lunch we'd have some homemade raviolis.
Come on, let's make it happen. I think the Italians out there in the Northeast would love it.
I'll tell you what, there's very few people I would go do this with, but if Manzo wanted to go fuel racing and be a crew chief, and we had somebody give us a little guidance, I'd probably have to say yes.
And there you have it, folks, all you Fortune 500 types listening. If you want to be on the Manzo Scelzi super team, make it happen. Make with the cash. There you go, Gary. Another exciting edition of Scelzi Says. How do you feel?
I'm liking it. I'm kind of getting a little chill right now. That, it would be fun to race with Manzo. If we had somebody, I guarantee it'd be fun. Could you imagine listening to us talk back and forth on the radio?
Yes.
You think you got to bleep me on your show? We'd have to have, instead of ESPN, we'd have to have HBO talking to us back and forth.
I love it, and I think there's a lot of fans out there who would love it. And Frank brought it up, and here we go. This could be the thing a year or two down the road. He's not ready to do it just yet. He's already said it's his future plans, but he's seriously considering it. And in our conversation, he says he wants you as a driver if you'll do it. So he's ready to twist some arms. So
all he's got to do is go get the right deal then, because I'm ready to drive it.
There you go. Gary, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Once again, you doing the Scelzi Says.
Joe, always a pleasure, and I look forward to doing it again.
He's Gary Scelzi, a four-time champ. I'm Joe Costello, and this is the Scelzi Says on CompetitionPlus.com.